What's something you once believed only to later realize it was propaganda? After Iraq invaded Kuwait, a little girl testified before the U.S. Congress. She related being in the Kuwaiti hospital, seeing Iraqi soldiers removing premature babies from incubators and shipping the incubators to Iraq while the babies died on the floor. A few years later, I learned the girl was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the U.S. They lived in New York City the entire time, and there was no way she could have seen what she testified before Congress. She had never even been to her own country. Turns out, the event never happened. It was all just a ruse to motivate Congress to vote for intervention. To this day, that woman is basically a prisoner in her own home. Too many journalists tried to ask her questions in public. Now she is not allowed out in public at all, and her husband refuses all interview requests. As a native Texan, I was taught that the Texas Revolution happened because of land rights. In reality, it was largely because slavery was illegal in Mexico and Texas settlers wanted slaves. They don't really talk about that part in school.
The MSG myths.
I love how many people swear to this day. Even the tiniest amount of MSG in Chinese food makes them sick, yet they can put down an entire bag of Doritos in one sitting without batting an eye. Just because your food doesn't advertise on the front of the package that it contains MSG doesn't mean it isn't a major ingredient. They usually label it as monosodium glutamate, which is what MSG stands for, and people don't even realize they are eating it all the time. It's the secret ingredient that makes a lot of things extra delicious.
Personal carbon footprints were created by the oil industry to offload the burden of decarbonization from themselves to consumers. Jaywalking was invented by the auto industry to create a stigma around walking as a mode of transit.
Go Ask Alice. A book allegedly made of a diary of an anonymous girl who was addicted to drugs, published by her parents post-mortem. Except, that wasn't true. It is alleged as a push to get teens to accept an anti-drug message from a more peer source instead of an adult. I mean, it worked on me as a kid, lol. I remember how it resonated with me. Now it is listed under fiction.
That diamond engagement rings are some ancient, timeless tradition. I was floored when I learned the whole concept was invented by a De Beers marketing team in the 1930s. The war on drugs. In New York, you would 15 to life on a nonviolent first offense. No plea deals possible. I grew up rural, assumed drugs turned you into a murderer. City problems. New York opened dozens of prisons in my area. Prison guard is the most common job in my family. If 85% go back to prison, it means it doesn't work.
As a kid growing up in a small town in a northern/Union state in the Midwest, Ohio, I learned that the Civil War was about states' rights, not slavery. While we did learn about slavery generally, it wasn't until I had one very assertive high school teacher that I learned what specific rights those states were most concerned about.
I would say the propaganda about saturated fat and cholesterol. I grew up thinking foods like margarine and sugary cereals were healthier than an egg.
Yeah, I think the whole low-fat mania was insanely damaging. I can remember my mom yelling at me in the early 90s to not use so much butter on my bread, as she basically devoured half a pound of Twizzlers. Low-fat.
That rights exist. They are very easy to take away. We have privileges, at best.
The same applies to check and balances. They only work if the people responsible for using them are actually interested in keeping others in check.
That Hawaii became the 50th state of the U.S. voluntarily.
That's not exactly true, though you have the right idea. Like almost every other state of the Union, it became a state voluntarily. But before that, it became a territory of the U.S. through brutal bloodshed of native peoples. About 93% of Hawaiians voted to become a state in 1959, but native Hawaiians only represented 15% of the population at the time.
Hard work pays off. No, the reward is burnout and more work. Early on in my old Army career, I had a colonel tell me, "Lieutenant, you worked hard and did a great job, and I reward a great job with more work." To this day, I loathe that attitude of piling things on and burning myself and others out, yet appreciate their raw candor since at least I knew I was screwed right away.
That the Gardasil vaccine, the HPV vaccine, was going to irrevocably mess up my body as a teen. My mom fully bought into what her church told her about it, and I was lucky to have a doctor broach it with me again as an adult before the cutoff.
That Columbus was a neat guy who came over looking to see what was out there and made friends with the natives. I remember learning this in kindergarten. We drew pictures of our favorite of his 3 ships.
Besides the genocide, It's conveniently omitted that he fudged the numbers in order to make the planet look smaller and stretched Asia about 4,000 miles east. He also threw it was pear-shaped, not the sphere everyone knew it was. The King and Queen of Spain sent his proposal to their experts, who told them to show him the door because his math didn't add up. The royals decided to give it a shot anyway because they were desperate for another route to Asia. Giving him 3 old caravels wasn't that big a deal. Edit. In addition, the reason he wanted the riches that would come from trade is because he wanted to finance a new crusade to retake the Holy Land.
That paid closed-source software is more secure than free open-source software. That reduce, reuse, recycle was how we'd save the planet. We need real, hardcore legislation that prioritizes the environment, not fluffy sayings and greenwashing, smoke-blowing consumer, or voter blaming. That different zones of the tongue correspond to different sensations, sweet, sour, spicy, etc. This was taught in middle school, and I tested it out myself with a candy warhead during lunch. I felt like an idiot for believing it, even just for a few hours. I have no idea who convinced every elementary school to teach this like it was a real thing, or why they did so. It flew in the face of common sense and could be easily disproved by anyone. I was considering joining the military when I was fresh out of high school. After getting older and talking to people who served, I think 100% of my reasons for wanting to join were just the result of military propaganda. The military will toughen you up or teach you confidence and discipline or teach you to be a man. No, Tom will do those things. Even with no outside influence, you'll have way more self-confidence and agency in your life at 26 than you had at 18, along with all the benefits of that. The military pays well. No, not for what it'll cost you, for sure. Even with no education, you could become a plumber, electrician, garbage man, or police officer and put yourself on a path to making way more money with less stress. And you can quit if you decide you don't like it or you have an abusive coworker. Chicks dig guys in uniform. Gold diggers dig guys in uniform. Chicks dig guys who still have both their legs and won't beat the shit out of her at 2 a.m. because he had a PTSD episode. You'll get to travel the world. You'll either be stuck in a base in Alabama slowly getting lung cancer from diesel fumes, or stuck in a base in Kuwait slowly getting lung cancer from diesel fumes. Save up and do a road trip to Florida or California instead. You'll be able to serve your country. The current public stance of the United States federal government is that Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic anyone. I could do a lot more for my country by engaging in local mutual aid and social activist groups or running for a position on a local school board. The got milk and how it helps make stronger bones. Turned it out they just had a surplus of dairy milk and were looking for the best way to pawn it off on customers.
As a child of the 80s, what the hell wasn't I told that wasn't propaganda? I mean, certainly in school. The number of times you find out teachers oversimplified things or flat out lied because it was inconvenient was astounding. Everything from America's founding forward was pretty much lies or dramatic coverage of the darker truths.
News reporters. I once gave an interview to a journalist about a topic I was representing. The published article shared almost nothing in common with what I actually said. They wrote the article they wanted and picked a couple quotes from what I said to make it sound like I was saying what they wanted said. That's when I realized nothing I read in the news was true. Breakfast is most important meal of the day, which turns out to be one of many successes of marketing propaganda.
I am from the South. I grew up believing in benevolent masters, that the North was unnecessarily aggressive and unreasonable, and that life was better for everyone, both black and white, before the Civil War. Any problems that the South has in the modern era are a direct result of Northern interference during and after the war. I took an African American history class in college and had a few existential crises, many crying jags, and the beginning of my deep distrust of the history I was taught in K-12.
That America was the best country on the planet, good and true, made and ran for the people. The civil rights movement solved racism in America. Good Lord, my public school education was bullshit in some respects.
That watering your lawn is going to make a difference in water use. We are all made guilty to take short showers and use water sparingly when corporations use millions and millions of gallons of water without restriction.
Saddam Hussein having WMDs, which led to the invasion of Iraq, not that I fully believed it. America was so adamant he had them, it almost seemed like THRY gave them to him. The fact 12 years later the Union was like, okay, maybe they did lie, then leave it at that was strange. Though really invasions of Middle Eastern countries were based on lies anyway, to depose dictators. Libya's gold magically growing legs and disappearing, Afghanistan being led by the former enemy, and now Syria being ruled by a totally, I swear to God, I'm not a terrorist anymore. Terrorists don't help the case. Until I was like 12, I genuinely believed that America was the only country in the world that gave its citizens human rights. I thought literally the entire rest of the world was heavily authoritarian hellscape. Partly learned from Christian school that the United States is special. I'll leave it at that so I don't get carried away. Dad was in the service and we were raised on base, hyper-patriotic. Pledge of allegiance at home, attendance at flag ceremonies, all of it. And I'm ashamed to admit that I raised my kids similarly. I'm sure I was every bit of 30 before I understood that our rights, our way of life, our freedoms, exist in plenty of other places, and that many countries far surpass us in several quality of life categories. Also, Christianity, specifically Christian nationalism. That Napoleon was a short man. I learned that this was English propaganda, and that he was actually of average height. It is still a general assumption that Napoleon was short.
I genuinely believed in that UN post-war never again crap as a preteen, and that everyone had learned lessons from WW2, Nazi Germany, and was so appalled. LOL. Gosh.
Nobody went to war with Germany just to stop the Holocaust. In fact, most countries, even the USA, refused to take in refugees fleeing the Holocaust. The Holocaust only happened because the world failed the victims, because basically 100 countries refused to take in refugees, and also, essentially every country the Nazis occupied in Europe was full of thousands of civilians willing to collaborate with the Nazis. If you or your country refuses to take in refugees for whatever reason, that's a good litmus test to indicate what you would have done if you were around during WW2. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the new ones.